How's it going?
Hello.
Team Twins here once again. So jumping right into our prototyping phase of this assignment. To sort of start off back to our point of view, we decided to focus on mainly sustainability and different ways of managing waste. And so from there, we sort of brought up and drafted a bunch of ideas for prototypes. And this weekend, we went and tested them out in the field. And sort of this idea of like sustainability also led us into some other point of views that we weren't initially expecting. And so that kind of goes into the first prototype we had, which was the idea of a sampling station or having a sampling position as part of these food trucks. So we've sort of initially thought of this as a way to deal with food waste because one problem we encountered was a lot of trucks at the end of the day had more food prepared than they could use for that day. And so we thought maybe if there was while people were waiting in line, if they could get samples of it, that was a way to sort of use some of that excess food. And then that also branched in the idea of like customer satisfaction while waiting in these long lines.
Kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah. And then some of the feedback we sort of got in our conversations this weekend was that while people were generally accepting of the idea, no one was super as excited as we thought about the idea of a sort of sampling in line. But then we kind of branched that off into like if there was like a main sampling station with food from multiple trucks at these different food parks, and that got a little more enthusiasm. And so that was an interesting find from that prototype.
Yeah.
So this was kind of a shift from our original POV of like a small truck owner, and we wanted to look at like what would make it easiest for them to be sustainable, because the trucks range from like a lot of employees that could handle more sustainability to fewer who can't really do that. So like in thinking about how we would reduce waste for truck owners, we came up with the idea of an app that would basically take in data that they would enter about their day, like the weather, day of the week, event, location that they had gone to, and then they would enter how many of each raw ingredients that they used and how many of their menu items that they sold. And basically this would end up taking into account and doing some data optimization and have an output of, it would give truck owners a report back on when they're going to a location, like this was how much you used last time you went here, so you probably shouldn't bring too much, or you should bring this much so you don't run out. And so that we did test with a couple of truck owners, and we got some good feedback on that. We had paper screens that had our input and output.
Here's a photo of us showing our prototype to one of the food truck owners we spoke with. We also got some good feedback from him, quoted to say, I would totally use that. And then our third prototype that we prototyped was along the point of view of sustainability. We noticed that lots of truck owners are using non-recyclable cutlery or plastic cutlery, and there are a few trucks using compostable cutlery, but with that it's still extremely expensive for truck owners to keep supplying that to their customers. And so we were kind of thinking about ways that we could reduce that waste, and so we came up with a dish drop prototype system, and we interviewed both customers and truck owners on that, and basically said, hey, to the truck owners, like, would you be willing to supply metal cutlery to your customers, knowing that they would bring it back to like a dish drop at your truck at the end of the day. And then we interviewed the customers by asking, frankly, how likely is it that you would return this cutlery? And one of the things that was interesting about this prototype and what we heard from the consumers was that multiple of them said this idea was somewhat feasible, but if there were a way for the parks to make it most like convenient for the customers, then it would be highly more successful. So we kind of morphed that prototype into a system in which not the truck owners, but the park owners would be supplying metal cutlery to the trucks for the day, and instead of having dish drops and individual truck utensils, there would be dish drops at like exits and near tables, so it was really easy to drop those off at the end of the day, and then overall reduce carbon footprint with all of the plastic. And also the truck owners would profit because then they wouldn't have to spend as much money on compostable cutlery, which we learned is very expensive.
Yeah, and we got good feedback from the people that we interviewed about these things, both truck owners and the customers. We definitely had like a kind of sliding scale of enthusiasm that we sensed. And our sample idea, which was our initial idea, it didn't have so much excitement. People were like, yeah, we'd be willing to try new things. Although for cutlery, I think it was more excitement than we anticipated from both truck owners and customers, because they both understood, like, yes, this could concretely help reduce waste. And then we got pretty good feedback on the app, saying that it would be very useful for truck owners.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks.
See you later. Bye.
We'll be back once I can find the mouse.